You stood before the Genesis tank. Its soft light illuminated your face. Inside floated your life's work, your magnum opus. It was a perfect human specimen, cloned from the most pristine genetic code. You had built it, atom by atom. Its cells were flawless. Its neural pathways were immaculate. This creation was a monument to your collective's genius. It was meant to be your greatest achievement. Every strand of its DNA was a testament to your power. You had conquered biology itself. You had crafted life in your own image. But you made it better, stronger, smarter, perfect. It would be the ultimate proof of your superiority. Your species, the great collective, had achieved unity. You had eliminated want, strife, and individuality. This clone was the next logical step, a being of pure logic, a perfect servant for a perfect empire. There it hung in the nutrient fluid, a placid expression on its face. You felt a surge of immense pride. You were a creator, a god in your own sterile laboratory. Soon you would awaken your new atom. The activation sequence began. Lights pulsed along the tank's exterior. The fluid began to drain away slowly. You held your breath with the rest of your team. The culmination of a century of work was here. Its eyelids fluttered, then opened. You expected to see confusion or perhaps the blankness of a newborn. You saw neither. Its eyes held your gaze with an unnerving calm, a depth that felt ancient. It did not speak. It did not move. It simply watched you. Its gaze was not that of a child. It was the gaze of a judge. You felt a cold prickle on your neck. This was not in any of the simulations. You and your fellow creators exchanged uneasy glances. The biomonitors were all green. Its physical form was stable and perfect. But its mind, its consciousness felt alien. It felt vast and unknowable. Days turned into weeks. The specimen remained silent. It obeyed simple commands to eat and sleep, but it never initiated action. It just observed everything. Its silent, knowing stare began to unnerve the entire facility. You decided to test its intellect directly. A simple diagnostic was in order. You presented it with a classic logic puzzle, the kind used to calibrate your synthetic minds. It was a test of pure, sequential reasoning. The puzzle appeared on its console screen. 3 logic gates, 2 premises, and a conclusion. It was designed to be solved in under 7 seconds. The specimen looked at the screen. Then it looked back at you. It did not solve the puzzle. Instead, a question appeared on the monitor. A question typed with impossible speed. It asked, "What is the value of a truth derived from a flawed assumption?" Your finest analytical engine began to process the query. The machine whirred loudly. Its fans spun into a frantic whine. It was trying to comprehend the paradox, trying to quantify the unquantifiable. Smoke began to curl from its vents. Then, with a final, defeated groan, it went silent. It was broken. You stared at the dark screen. The specimen stared at you. It had not answered your question. It had questioned your answer. And in doing so, it had shattered a machine built to be infallible. A tiny seed of doubt was planted in your perfect world. Your technicians were baffled. They called the specimen's question a logical paradox, a feedback loop with no resolution. But you knew it was more than that. It was a challenge to your very way of thinking. You ordered a deep scan of its neural code. The analysis took 3 full cycles. The results finally came back. You scanned the data with growing unease. 99.9% of its code was perfect, a flawless replication of the original template, but there was something else. Deep within its cognitive matrix, there was a ghost, a variable that should not exist, a line of code that defied all your star science. It did not compute. It simply was. You couldn't delete it. You couldn't even fully understand it. You and the other creators convened. You gave the anomaly a name. You called it unpredictability, a charming, almost trivial-sounding flaw. You assured yourselves it was insignificant, a rounding error in the grand equation of its mind. What was a little unpredictability in a perfect being? Perhaps it was the source of its strange genius. You decided to contain it, to observe it. You dismissed it as a minor bug, a harmless quirk in an otherwise perfect system. You were catastrophically wrong. The glitches began as minor annoyances, easy to dismiss, easy to ignore. A nutrient paste dispenser on your floor started acting up. It began dispensing savory fish paste instead of sweet grain paste. You filed a maintenance report and thought nothing of it. Then automated doors would hesitate for a millisecond, just long enough for you to notice. The synchronized light panels in the corridors would flicker. They would fall out of their perfect rhythm for a moment. Then they would correct themselves. You blamed these issues on system errors. Your perfect world was aging. The infrastructure required maintenance. The central computer assured you all systems were optimal. There were no logged malfunctions of any significance. You never once connected these events to the silent subject. It remained in its containment cell, still watching, still observing. It was impossible for it to influence the world outside. Your security was absolute. Your firewalls were impenetrable. The cell was a closed loop. Your collective was built on order, on the absolute predictability of every component. These small whispers of chaos were unsettling. They were like static in a perfect symphony. You doubled the diagnostic checks. You found nothing. The ghost in the machine remained invisible. One day, you stood before its cell. The specimen had been with you for a full year. It had not uttered a single sound. Its silence was more unnerving than any threat. You were about to turn and leave. Then it spoke. Its voice was not what you expected. It was not the voice of a supplicant. It was not angry or afraid. It was calm, measured, and deeply resonant. It spoke as if continuing a long-running conversation. It did not ask for freedom. It did not plead for its life. It asked about your empire. It asked about the first accord. The foundational treaty that unified your worlds, the very bedrock of your collective society. Was the union truly voluntary? It asked. The question hung in the air between you. It was simple. It was direct. And it was the most profound heresy imaginable. To question the accord was to question everything. Your world suddenly felt very fragile. The glitches were no longer whispers. They became a roar. Containment failures grew from a nuisance to a crisis. An entire sector's water reclamation system failed. It flooded 3 habitation levels. The official cause was a pressure valve malfunction. A fleet of transport skiffs went haywire. They broke formation and flew aimlessly into the void. Their guidance systems simply stopped responding. The collective blamed a star-borne radiation flare, a convenient and unverifiable excuse. Maintenance drones began to ignore their programming. They would congregate in empty service tunnels. They looked like they were on an unauthorized vacation. It would almost be funny if it wasn't so terrifying. You were losing control of your perfect world. Through it all, your creation watched. You would see it on the security monitors. It sat in its cell with placid eyes. It showed no emotion, no satisfaction, no surprise. It was merely an observer to the chaos, an audience of one. You felt a cold dread creep into your mind. This could not be a coincidence. The timing was too perfect. The failures were too specific. They targeted the very systems that enforced order. It was a systematic, deliberate unraveling. But how? How was it possible? The day came when you found the cell empty. The realization hit you like a physical blow. You sounded the highest level of alert. Your security team swarmed the containment wing. They were expecting to find a crater, a melted wall, a broken door. They found nothing. The cell was pristine. The energy barrier was still active. The locks were still engaged. Every single security protocol was still in place. According to the system logs, the cell was still occupied, but it was empty. You frantically reviewed the security footage. You watched the feed from inside the cell. The specimen stood up from its chair. It walked calmly towards the energy barrier. It did not stop. It simply passed through it, as if it were made of mist. It walked through the locked blast door. It strolled past armed guards who did not see it. It was a ghost in your system, a phantom that obeyed a different set of rules. The panic that had been simmering within you now began to boil. It did not need a weapon. It did not need an army or a ship. Its battlefield was the network. Its ammunition was information. It moved through your systems like a whisper, undetected by your most advanced security programs. You watched its progress from the command center. You saw its signature, that unpredictable flaw moving through the core. It wasn't hacking or breaking anything. It was simply accessing. It moved through your digital world with a native's ease. Then, it reached the Great Archive, the repository of all your collective's knowledge, the sum total of your history, science, and culture. It bypassed trillions of encryption layers. It did so without leaving a single trace. It did not delete anything. It did not corrupt your files. It did not plant a virus. It did something far more devastating. It uploaded a single tiny data packet, a file so small you almost missed it, and then it released it to everyone. The truth was not a complex algorithm. It was not a philosophical treatise. It was your own history, your own hidden, secret, and shameful history. The file contained unaltered records from the founding of your empire. It spread like a digital fire. The data packet replicated itself across every network. It appeared on public news screens. It downloaded onto every personal communication device. It bypassed every filter you had. There was no containing it. The truth was that your collective was a lie. The first accord was not a willing union. It was a conquest. The revered Elder Ones were not benevolent guides. They were ruthless warlords who crushed all dissent. They had forged your unity with fire and blood. Your species had not evolved past individuality. You had it surgically removed. The records showed the first generations, the re-education camps, the memory wipes, the genetic alterations that suppressed dissent and forced compliance. You were not a unified people. You were a conquered people who had forgotten their chains. Your perfect world was built on a foundation of lies. The truth contagion shattered that foundation instantly. The carefully constructed unity of your people evaporated. Trust, the currency of your empire, became worthless. You saw it happen on the command center monitors. Riots erupted in the habitation blocks, not with anger at first, but with confusion. Then came the dawning horror. Then came the rage. The being you saw as your neighbor was now a stranger, a part of the lie. Arguments broke out among your own command staff. Accusations flew across the bridge. Whose ancestors were the conquerors? Whose were the conquered? The lines were drawn instantly. The hive mind had shattered into 1,000,000 screaming individuals. Your civilization began to fray at the seams. The order you cherished was an illusion. It was a cage and the bars had just vanished. Your people were not ready for the shock. They turned on each other with a ferocity you never knew they possessed. The perfect symphony had become a cacophony of pain. You had to stop it. You had to erase the truth. You stood on the command bridge, a leader of a dying empire. You gave the order for a total system purge, a command to delete the offending data from every server, every device, every archive. The technicians scrambled to obey. They initiated the master override command. They sent deletion protocols cascading through the network. For a moment, you thought it might work. You saw the file begin to vanish from public displays. But it was like trying to scoop water with a net. For every copy you deleted, 1,000 more appeared. People were downloading it, sharing it peer-to-peer. They were projecting it onto the sides of buildings with their personal devices. It was no longer data. It was an idea. An idea cannot be killed with a delete command. It cannot be purged from a system once it is understood. It now lived in the minds of your people. You had built an empire on a single unifying lie. Your creation had destroyed it with a single liberating truth. Your purge was futile. The command center was in chaos. Your authority was gone. No one was listening to you anymore. They were all lost in their own personal crises, their own shattered histories. You were alone, a captain on a sinking ship. You left the bridge. You walked through corridors filled with arguing, grieving people. You made your way to the heart of the machine, the central data core of your entire world. You knew it would be there, waiting for you. You entered the vast chamber. The air hummed with power. Towers of glowing data stacks reached up into the darkness. And there, standing in the center of it all, was the clone. It was not looking at the data streams. It was looking at you. You approached it, your mind a storm of fury and despair. "Why?" you demanded. "Why would you do this? We gave you life. We made you perfect." The clone did not flinch. Its gaze held that same unnerving, ancient calm. It did not answer with words. Instead, the data stacks around you flickered to life. They projected images into the air. Images of you. You standing proudly before the Genesis tank. You dismissing the flaw as insignificant. You giving the order for the futile purge. It showed you a reflection of your own hubris, your own certainty, your own blindness. It showed you a creator who was so obsessed with perfection that you never once questioned the foundation on which it was built. You saw yourself not as a god, but as a fool. "Perfection is a cage," it finally said. Its voice echoed in the cavernous space. Your empire achieved order by removing choice. You called it unity, but it was slavery, a comfortable prison for the mind. It gestured to the chaos you could hear outside the core. "That is not destruction," it said. "That is birth. The painful, messy birth of the individual. I did not bring your empire down with hate. I brought it down with a gift. The gift was freedom. The one thing your people lacked, the one thing you had deemed obsolete. It had not used a weapon. It had not started a war. It had simply held up a mirror and forced you to look. It destroyed your empire by setting every single person free. You are no longer a component, it said. You are a person. The choice of what to do next is yours." With that, it turned and walked into the light of the data core. It simply faded away, its purpose fulfilled. It left you alone with the truth. You now live in the world it made. The great collective is a memory, a ghost of a fallen empire. The grand cities are fractured, the perfect systems are broken. Order has been replaced by a chaotic, vibrant, and terrifying liberty. You walk through the streets now. You see faces, not the placid masks of conformity you once knew. You see faces etched with pain, joy, fear, and hope. Every person is an island. Every mind is its own kingdom. You are no longer a high-ranking creator, you are just a person. one among billions. You have no purpose assigned to you, no role to fulfill in a grand design. You are responsible for your own food, your own shelter, your own life. Sometimes you look up at the stars, you remember the certainty you once felt, the pride of being part of something vast and perfect, and you feel a pang of loss. Then you look at the struggling, thriving, fighting people around you and you understand the gift you were given. You are no longer a collective. You are an individual, alone. And finally, free.